Why does American wine give more headaches than French wines? This is actually a myth I hear many times here when people come to my tasting. Many Americans come here, they say, how come back home I drink 2 glasses of wine, I can't drink anymore, I have a headache. And then when they come to France, they drink a bottle and they say, give me one more, I'm ready for more. And the day after, they feel totally fine. Actually, it's not really something about nationality. I'm going to come up to that. What should we discuss is what are the different myths. I hear many people that tell me, for example, red wines back home give me lots of headaches because there is so much sulfites. I just feel bad the day after because of the sulfites. This is actually quite a myth. In most wines, in reality, there is more sulfites in white wines than there is in reds. So if you don't have headaches with whites, it's probably not the sulfites. It's more likely to be histamine, for example. So to make red wine, you throw the skins of the grapes in the juice, and this histamine, you find it on the skins, and when you put the skins in the juice, it's going to transfer to your wine. And about 2% of the population, something like that, a very small percentage of the population reacts badly to histamine, and that what gives them headaches. Another main reason is residual sugar. How many times you drink something sweet and the day after your head is bombarding, is very, very strong headaches. Sugar drains out the water in your brain, and therefore that's what gives you a strong headache. The terms of dryness in Europe and the US, it's a bit different. In France, drier wine is something that has less than 9 grams of sugar per liter. In the US, it's more between 5 and 25. I'm talking about producers wise for them to call it dry. So generally speaking, you do have a pool of wine that have a bit more residual sugar than in France, and therefore that could be one of the reasons also that gives you those strong headaches in general.
Je t'avoue, instinctivement, j'aurais dit le contraire.
Que le sucre te donne moins mal à la tête?
Ouais, moi j'aurais du céréal. Ouais, mais par expérience.
I'll show you actually, when you pour the wine, you're going to see how much thicker the wine is. I'm going to compare, both are from France in that case. This is what I mainly carry in my shop, of course. I'm going to compare, for example, one that is quite bone dry, that is actually less than 2 grams of sugar per liter, which is extremely low, which is most of the wines actually in France. French people tend to drink way less sweeter wines. It's not really in our culture. And I'm just going to compare it to a very sweet wine. This one is Sauternes. It's from Bordeaux, so it's probably one of the sweetest wines you find in France, one of the most magnificent sweet wine as well. So just when you pour, to give you an example, this is pouring a sweeter wine, way more syrupy. You can see based on the color here, for example, there is no color added, and this is extremely yellow. And also it was a bit thicker when you pour. Whereas if you have a white here, this goes way more slowly. The flow is very different. Blind tasting, this is quite easy to say which one is sweet, which one isn't. And when you pour, when you swirl as well, it stays a bit more on the side of the glass. This one is a bit less the case here. It's going to be much more fluid and easier. And then also in the wine bottles, what matters as well is the yeast strain that you use. For example, we have higher regulations here. In the US, you tend to have a higher alcohol wine. Long story short, when you think about enzymes and yeast, if it's more commercial, it's going to try to extract more stuff. It's going to take things much quicker compared to the natural environment, which is going to take its own time. And the longer it takes, generally speaking, the more the wine is going to be relaxed, the quicker it takes, there's going to create more stress, higher temperature, and all of those things is going to combine higher tannins, higher histamines, which those are really compounds that gives you those strong headaches at the end result. Generally speaking, in France, we have AOCs, AOP, so those are appellations. In Italy, it's DOCG, for example. Those are regulations we have in European unions, and they're quite restrictive. So the type of enzyme and the type of yeast you use are also quite restrictive. So it tends to have less of those strong yeast and enzymes, and therefore that could be one of the reasons as well. There is also some other things which are used, such as flavor enhancer. For example, in the US, there is something about color that you can use, which is mega purple, which is a colorant in your wine, which is going to make it darker because they notice American people like their wines darker. This is something we cannot really use in France as well. I'm going to be very stereotypical, but generally speaking, when you think of California, for example, and when you think of France, weather, it's much hotter over there. The fact that it's hotter weather, this is going to bring more sugar to your grape, and therefore it's going to end up with more alcohol after the fermentation. More alcohol per bottle, of course, ends up into a bigger headache as you get a bit drunker quicker in that case. Here, I've taken the most controversial 2 examples in the sense that I chose the one that is used to be called 2 Buck Chuck and a French Côte du Rhône. Let's compare those two. I have many people in my tasting that ask me, have you tasted 2 Buck Chuck? Honestly, I've never done it. First thing I'm quite surprised is that it's a proper cork. Surprising for this price here. This one is a red blend that you have on that one, because it says red blend, but it doesn't even say what kind of red blend. Red blends means actually nothing. All right, so let me first pour the American wine here. Very dark in color, very purpley color here, and the French wine over here. A bit more clear, I mean those are in the darker side, but this one has a bit more purpley color. This is a bit more ruby in that case. All right, this is a fruit bomb there on the nose. You can, very different. And this is a bit more red fruits compared to that one. There's a bit more black fruits there when you compare the nose. It feels very jammy. It's not very subtle here on the nose. Right, okay. I don't know if it's because it's early in the morning, but that's quite strong on the palate. Very strong acidity. For a red wine, I didn't expect that at all. It doesn't feel too natural in terms of the acidity. I think there might be some additives there that creates that acidity really in the back of the palate and really makes me salivate a lot. The fruit seems a bit unripened to me. It's not, it smells jammy on the nose, but on the palate it's a bit less. To be fully honest, that's not my style of wine personally. There is a higher acidity, there's a bit of tannins. I mean, I just paid $3.75. That value for money, this is good. If you bring me this wine and I don't know what it is, I think it's really lacking the balance. It doesn't have the length, like it's on the palate, but it doesn't stay too long. There is a few flavors enhancers in my opinion there. Let me compare it to the French wine. So this is a producer, Useglio, that really adds zero additives. It works in biodynamic, very, very clean wines. Okay, the black fruits, yeah, you really feel them. A bit jammier on the palate, feels much rounder. The acidity is there to counterbalance the black fruit, but it's not a kick actually. It's actually very interesting to compare it both. Here the balance is much more controlled. I mean, it's not an expensive wine, and this is a Côte du Rhône. In my shop, I carry it for 18 euros, I mean $20. It's a much higher balance, very fruity, easy to drink. In my opinion, I mean, this is much better, but again, I might be a bit biased, but clearly you see the difference in quality. I've compared French and American wines, but in reality, I don't think this is fair actually. What you should really compare is not about nationality, it's about how the wine is made. When you compare it, generally speaking, to the bigger volume, it's true that in the US, it's more brand oriented, and when you're more brand oriented, those bigger brands, they tend to buy grapes to smaller producers, they have a bit more bigger volume, and when you have bigger volume, you have to have kind of a recipe to follow because you're not gonna taste 300 different barrels in there or different steel tank. Whereas in France, we're not really brand oriented, we're more city oriented. When you see Sancerre, when you see Chablis, all of those are villages, cities. And in those cities, there is 400 family-owned vineyards. We have about 80,000 family vineyards here in France that make their own wine and sell it under their own brand. When you belong to Sancerre, those 400 wineries, they're gonna ship it to the US. People are gonna buy it, not because I'm Mr. A or Mrs. B, but because it says the name of the city on the label. And therefore, those people don't spend a cent in marketing. They can have only 5, 10 barrels. They're gonna be able to adjust each of the barrels. They're gonna taste each one of them, say, okay, this one is liking this. It's gonna be a bit more tailor-made for those smaller wineries, and therefore those are distributed with less additives. And that's why when we put everything in the big picture, French wines in general tends to have less stuff and therefore gives you less headaches compared to American wines, but take it with a pinch of salt. And fellow Americans, try to go to those boutique vineyards. I've tasted most incredible American wines in the past few years. When people come here to my tasting, they bring me wine. And I still have a few actually. In the next few weeks, I'm gonna taste a few American wines, have the live reaction of just me tasting it to really say what I think and being frankly honest. You can check out in my store I carry here at Secret Wine Door. You're gonna find all kind of French wines, all family-owned vineyard, very small family producers. I fully encourage for everybody to go for small family-owned vineyards. It really matters at the end, and also you're talking to people directly instead of big corporation. That's my motto here at Secret Wine Door. Regardless if it's French, American, Japanese, South American, what matters is not about nationality, it's about how the wine is made more than anything.